Hey, what's up, guys? Super excited today. We have Jon Lallande with us today. John, thank you so much for joining us, man.
Dude, thanks for having me. I'm excited.
I'm excited too, man. I've heard nothing but good things about you, and man, I love talking sales, and super excited to learn your story and get into it. So, for people who might not know you yet, can you kind of introduce yourself and share who John is?
Yeah, my name's Jon Lallande. I'm actually a former reconnaissance sniper. So I spent 5 years in the Marine Corps right out of high school. Did that as kind of the tail end of my enlistment period. I had some money saved because I went on deployment. Before that, I was terrible with money, so I spent every dollar that I had. I wasn't able to spend money, so saved up a little bit of money and tried to figure out what I was going to do with it. Luckily, I had a military officer tell me about real estate investing, which led me into wholesaling. Right, so in my barracks room, doing launch control text like by myself. I had no idea what I was doing. Took me literally 8 months to get my first deal. And fast forward, I guess about 5 years later now, I'm not an overnight success like, a lot of other people. 5 years later, I'm running a business that does about 6 figures a month. Um, I guess now we're doing multi six figures. We just hit our biggest month of $240,000 so far in February, and the month's not over, so we might break the 300K mark.
Wow,
So that's a little bit about me. I train sales. I'm a Jeremy Minor seventh level licensed sales trainer. So I also teach other real estate investors how to buy properties off market at bigger discounts.
that's awesome, man. I love that. So,
Yeah.
so price of real, you just jumped right in out of the military. Real estate was your first foray into business, and
Yeah, kind of. So I simplified the story over that 5 years. If you want me to dive in a little
yeah,
deeper, I can.
yeah,
Yeah. So I started out just texting, right? Doing that was I was making $5,000 a month in the military, which to
mhm,
me I was loaded, right? Um, and so I was spending, I guess, 20% of my entire paycheck was going towards marketing.
mm,
And um, and so I spent every dollar that I saved on deployment on marketing for 8 months. I didn't close a single deal. And I was so bummed. I was like, everybody's like, it's going to be easy. And I thought it would be easy. So I spent all my money. And luckily, it was like on the eighth month after I ran out of money, a deal finally closed. And it wasn't even an assignment, it was like a referral that I was working with an agent. We like JV'd on this deal. He ended up getting a listing. And I ended up getting just enough to kind of start over with
mm.
marketing again. Right. And so I did that again for a while. I'm pretty sure I drained my account again, like lost all my money, but I just stayed with it. Right. And so I stayed with it for a while and I finally started actually wholesaling. Um, Fast forward about a year, I met these two guys, and we kind of clicked because I sold them two deals in like the first 30 days that we met, and it was like reverse wholesaling. They were like, "Hey, this is where I want to buy."
Mhm.
I was like, "I can go get deals anywhere." So I went and found two deals for them. They closed on both of them. We made a bunch of money, and then they asked me if I wanted to partner with them. They're like, you bring the deals, we'll flip them, right? So I got into flipping kind of at the same time that I also went into mortgages. And so fast forward, I built my mortgage business up pretty quick. Rates were at 2%. So I was making pretty good money, like 40, 50K a month
Mhm.
um, on my good months. I think I averaged about 400K that year, and took that, bought a bunch of apartment complexes. I bought a hotel and still scaled my flipping business. All of that was going great for 2020, 21, and 22. Everybody's making money no matter who you are. You could throw a rock and be an idiot and you're going to make money, right?
Right.
And so that was me. I was an idiot that was throwing rocks and I was making a ton of money. We were flipping houses, buying them for, basically 95% of the market value and selling them for 105 and just making a ton of money. And then when the market turned, that's when things changed for me personally. We lost, I mean, as a company, we lost about $800,000 in that year. So yeah, we got tied up in some flips. We had a luxury flip in Palm Springs that we lost, I think, probably around 300,000 on that one. We had another one in Long Beach that we were going to wholesale. We lost over 150 on that one. and then a few more. So we really got spanked. We got spanked hard. And the only thing that was keeping us alive at the time, because we were flipping,
Hmm.
was sailing. And I was doing everything right at that point. So I was wholesaling to keep the business alive. And I realized I was holding the entire company. Unfortunately, my partners were great guys. They just didn't really know wholesaling. They didn't like wholesaling. Um, so I was doing all the work and I kind of got burned out from it. So I said, "Hey guys, why don't I just buy you out? We'll still pay off all the private money investors and everything, which we did.
Hmm.
We paid off a ton, hundreds of thousands of dollars in gap funds from wholesaling, and
Yeah.
wholesaling was able to get me out. So that was 2020, the end of 2022, when the market kind of shifted a little bit. So I really just focused on two things. I was like, if I'm going to build my own business,
Mm.
I need to become a killer at sales, and I need to figure out how to get the best quality leads, because I'm
Mm.
not going to waste my time sifting through SMS leads. Like I felt like I was valued more than that. So
Yeah.
I said, I'm going to go get the best quality leads, and I'm just going to become a savage at sales. So I went out. I kind of had some systems training from a group called Level Up. And then I went out and I found Jeremy Miner. I just reached out to everybody. I was like, hey, who's the best sales trainer? Right.
Hmm.
And everybody kind of pointed me in the direction of Jeremy. And so I reached out to their team. I joined their basic program, then immediately was like, I want more one-on-one attention. Joined their highest program of Inner Circle, and that was when things changed for me big, because I was kind of inconsistent before, doing 30K a month, and that was I was able to have a consistent sales process where I was able to get to 100K a month consistently. So it was like January 100K, February, March, April. Everything was 100K months, and I was just following a process. So from there, I started to scale my team to where it's at now, where I've got 3 reps on acquisitions, 2 on dispo. I've got a full team. I've got 2 directors. But that was kind of from start to finish. It wasn't like I was an overnight success. I failed a lot, right? I
Yeah.
failed a ton.
Man, I appreciate you sharing that, because I feel like that's really what it is. And a lot of people talk about it, but it's just failing and failing and failing until you finally figure it out. And then it's more failing again after that until you figure out the next step. But
Yep.
that's huge, man. And yeah, definitely a few things I want to pack in there. So what kept you going, I guess, that initial 8 months? Because our audience, a lot of newer wholesalers, people just getting into it, and they might still be going through it, might not have gotten that first deal yet. What kept you going? 8 months it's a long time. It's almost a whole year. But what kept you in the game, and what was your mindset like at that time?
Yeah, so I was a reconnaissance Marine before, and then I went through sniper school right after that. So I had been through really tough selections where people quit.
Hmm.
And I don't think I'm the toughest guy in the world, but I feel like the skill that I developed in the Marine Corps is, okay, I might not make it through this 5 month selection, but I'm going to make it through this next workout. And, or I'm going to make it to lunch. Like, I don't know if I'm tired. It's 3 in the morning. We're waking up. I don't know if I'm going to make it through today, but I'm just going to make it to lunch, right? I'm going to make it to lunch. I'm going to get through the first workout. And then during that first workout, I'm like, we're on 4 miles into a 8 mile run, and I'm just gonna make it to another mile. Like, I don't know if I'm gonna make it through the entire thing, but I'm just gonna make it another mile, right? And I would do that, and I'd play that game with myself of, I'm just gonna go, another minute. I'm just gonna do one more push up, and that was kind of the same mentality that I brought over to my wholesaling business. Was, I don't know if I'm going to be successful with this wholesaling, but I'm just going to send out, another 500 text. I'm
Mm.
going to send out another 500 texts. I'm going to call another 5 people. Like, I don't know if anybody's going to call. I'm just going to call another 5 people. Right. And I did that, and that just got me through. I don't know. I mean, looking back, I probably should have quit, right? Like, I should
Mhm.
have, like, if I and I didn't have any benchmark of, this is how long it normally takes. You hear people that, I was listening to Bigger Pockets. Someone would send out 100 mailers and get a deal, and I was like thinking that was the standard. But I guess I just kept going. Right, I'm gonna do this much more, 500 texts more, 5 calls, and so forth and so on, and that kept me to where I was, finally able to find success.
I love that, man. Yeah, we just had an event 2 days ago. Yeah, 2 days ago. Or yeah, I spoke, was talking about one of my favorite stories is 3 feet from gold. And yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and that definitely feel like that's been, if you look back in my life, and it's just I'm dumb, stubborn, just keep going. And it's crazy. And every time I felt like quitting, didn't. It felt like, right around the corner, sometimes a little further around the corner, but it's like it always paid off in the end.
Definitely.
But awesome, man. So what was so you're going through that. So did you kind of have that mindset before that? Was that from all the elite high level military training you did that you kind of it built that skill of being like perseverance, or where do you think that comes from?
Yeah, no, I definitely not. I was probably the most undisciplined person that you could meet in high school.
Mhm.
So much so that like I think anybody that sees where I'm at now that knows me from high school is probably thinking, how the hell did that guy get there? Because I did 5 years of high school just because one year I couldn't get to school on time. Like I would sleep in. Um, I think the big thing is I have a little bit of a superiority complex, and when I started seeing, all the people that I was friends with, and I was like, I can't end up like them. So
Mm,
I got to do something with my life. I got to make something of my life. And at the time, that was it. It was I want to be like an elite, somebody that's gone through elite military training. That's going to be my identity, and I really attached my identity to that and
mm,
held on to it. Like I need to be successful here. Like this is I don't if I fail through this, I'm no better than all of the people that maybe I was around in my earlier years, right?
mhm.
And so that kind of pushed me through, telling people about my goals and having a big enough ego behind it where I'm like, I can't fail because I told people.
Yeah.
And so that's a big thing too, of when I tell people and people know what I'm doing. I have a little bit of an ego where I'm like, I already told people I'm going to do it. I've got to be able to do this thing. And before that, I had no track record of being disciplined. I had no track record of getting through anything worth doing.
Mm,
Right. So that kind of showed me just breaking through. I feel like if you can do one thing that sets you apart from other people, that one thing, then you go when you're doing something else, you're like, well, I've done this before, so why can't I do this? And then you just stack that evidence up over and over until eventually, you feel like you can do almost anything, right?
yeah. 100%. Yeah, I feel like that's a great point. I feel like you just stack those wins, and like show yourself, and you kind of have those reference points to look back at and say, "Hey, I was able to do that. I can do this thing." But it's man, I love that. Now we just had an Army Ranger on the show a couple weeks ago. And man, it's one of the questions I asked him, and I want to ask you as well. You've also been through super elite training, and what are some of the takeaways, or what were some of the things your military career or going through the training, or just really going through that you were able to take and apply to real estate?
Yeah. So other than the first one that we spoke about, the second one is getting around the right people.
Mm,
And so I remember a pivotal point in my military career when I went through my recon training where I saw the guys that were doing really well, and they were just they were always at the top. On every swim, every run, they were coming first, and I just started to eat lunch around them. Like, hey, I'm gonna go eat lunch with those guys,
mm,
right? And I wasn't the fastest guy at the beginning, right? And I wasn't the fastest swimmer, but I just started hanging around with the guys that were. And it's strange because just that alone, I guess, tied my identity. I need to be around these guys because these are my friends, and I need to be doing what they're doing. And so I just started to do that. And it was almost like unconscious. I never wanted to be at the back of the pack, right? I always wanted to be at the top with the guys that are doing really well. And that same thing carried over in business. When I got out of the military, my goal was I want to make 60K a year. That'd be awesome. I can't
mm,
imagine if I could make the same amount that I made in the military, but doing real estate. That'd be so cool. And then I get out, and one of the guys, two of the guys that I partnered with were making $1 million a year. And then I felt, I didn't hit a million that first year, but I hit 400,000 with my real estate as well, probably like closer to that 5 or 6,
mm,
right? And I never would have I never would have thought that I could do that. It's just my friends are doing this, and maybe you don't hit a million, but you will definitely get closer than if I would have stayed in the military and stayed hanging out with my military friends. Probably would have gone and got a job similar to what they were doing as DA or SWAT or just to maybe go join a police force and make 60K a year. And that would have been my life. But I
Mm,
just got around a different group of people. So that was a huge thing, right? And then I think the other thing is the cool thing about the military and the selections that I went through, sniper school was a little different, but as far as recon training, most of it was just you just don't quit. Like, if
mm,
you just don't quit, you'll get through, right? You don't have to be there's some physical tests that you need to get through, but by this point, you've been beaten to shape well enough to where most people can get through the physical tests. It's just don't quit. I think it's the same thing with real estate, right? Real estate, I've gone through ups and downs a lot. I'm not the success story where I had one win and then I've just stayed winning from there, right? And the not quit mentality has gotten me really far, and I know I'm going to have more. I talk about this all the time. I'm not done with problems. I'm
mm.
going to have rough times ahead, and I'm just not going to quit because I see the guys that have been doing it for 20, 30 years, and the ones that stick with it are successful. So I'm just going to keep doing that.
100%, man. I totally agree with that. Yeah, I think if you're not having problems or new problems, you're not growing, and you're just staying where you're at. So,
100%. Yep.
but I love that, man. So thank you for sharing that. Now, I'd love to get into, what are you doing? I mean, I guess what are you doing differently than other wholesalers? I mean, I'm lucky enough that I know a lot of people in the industry, and I know a lot of people that I've got to interview on the podcast, and we do a lot of systems and stuff. There's
Yeah.
different companies, so we get to see kind of insight on how people, run their business and operate. But yeah, the numbers and so the level you're at operating at is, you're crushing the game, man. What are you doing differently than most other wholesalers out there, you think?
Yeah. So I think a year ago I was doing a lot different, and I think everybody's kind of catching up to something similar now, which is I don't do outbound at
Mhm,
all. So I don't do SMS. I don't do cold call. And now you see everybody's running ads, right? You
mhm.
got to switch to inbound, or you're going to go out of business.
Yeah.
Um, so I'm really big on inbound, but I think the biggest thing is you have to think what are the factors that cause a wholesaling business to win over the others? And everybody has access to the same leads,
Mm,
but who can pay the most for the leads? The one who has the best sales team, right?
mhm,
The team, the best trained salespeople can pay the most for the leads. So when I realized that, that's what I went all in on. Everybody's got access, so I'll just tell you like the channels that we're using. Besides our own in-house YouTube marketing and Google PPC, we are doing that. It's doing well. We're doing need to sell my house fast, lead Zolo, property leads, motivated leads, I speed to lead. Yeah, all these
mm.
sound familiar, right?
Yeah.
Everybody uses the same companies, right? But if you notice those leads, you have the ability to bid on those leads. And if you're the top bidder, you get the most leads. However, if you're paying $1,000 a lead, you need to be able to convert those things 1 out of 10 leads and have a $30,000 average profit per deal, or you are not going to have a good business,
Mm,
right? So we're not doing really anything crazy on the marketing. We are doing YouTube in-house, which is working really well. We're getting pretty cheap leads, and I can definitely talk about that more down the road.
mhm,
But we really hammer on sales training. So we've got the Jeremy Minor courses that we review every day. We treat it like snipers in sniper school, where they're focused on shooting. Our craft is sales.
mm,
And so how do we go through a sales process that most importantly is predictable? Because the most common mistake that I see salespeople make is they don't have a process. So they kind of just go all over. They're
mm,
just like I'm here. And then they wonder why they don't have consistent results, but they have an inconsistent process. So we train for an hour every single day on just sales.
mm,
Monday, Wednesday, Friday, we're going to be doing role plays. Tuesday, Thursday, we're going to be doing call reviews, right? And what I want to see is I want to see on the call review, we're going to give them some coaching feedback. And then I want them to change that on the next call review, the next time they're up, right? And the same thing with role play. I'm going to give them feedback. I'm going to say, all right, we're going to work on the introduction of our script, what we call the connection phase. Now, everybody go out, go execute, right? Ready, break. Now come back and show me a call where you've executed that perfectly. And that's really the big difference between, I feel like what we're doing and a lot of companies do is, a lot of companies out there will put, they'll do their sales training, they'll put their John Martinez up on the screen, and then that they just leave it, right? They just leave it at that. Or they'll even go through, like, they'll go through the Jeremy Miner stuff and they'll say, "Hey, what'd you guys take away?" And then they just leave it and they don't check back in on progress,
Mm,
right? And then another thing is, I see a lot of the successful companies out there, until you get a really good sales manager, you need to have somebody that's showing the team what's possible.
mm,
And so I'll still today, like today, I'm going to go make some sales calls after this.
mm,
And I've got reps that can do that, but I need to go in and I need to show them, hey, this is how you handle an objection, and then show them live, because at the end of the day, if you're telling them something can be done and they don't believe it, they won't even try.
mm.
They won't go that extra mile on objection handling, right? They won't ask that difficult question about what happens if you don't take care of this and the problem keeps getting worse. They're not going to ask those questions because they don't think that they're actually going to work. And
Yeah.
so I really I really try to emphasize leading from the front as far as sales and saying, "Hey, this is what that looks like." If I implement a new sales process, I don't just go and tell them. I'll show them. I'll make a call. I'll go through it and show them what a perfect process looks like, and I'll say, "Hey, here's what you guys can do." Right? And these are all relatively new, new things that I've been learning over the last 12 months. So I don't have it to a 100% science. I'm not the guys doing 10 to $20 million a year. But that's what's helped me at least get to these big months of, for me, big months, 100K, 200K a month.
Yeah. No, it's huge, man. So is your so kind of just focusing on the sales team aspect of it for a bit. How many guys are there? Are you guys all in the same office every day? Are they virtual? How does that work?
Yeah. So I live out of the country. I live
Okay.
in Medellin, Colombia. I've built my entire business living out of the country.
Wow.
And so I have one guy who's out of state, and then the other two right now are in state.
Hmm.
One guy's in training. I've got another guy starting in next week. Typically, my team, I usually have about 2 to 3 people. And what
Hmm.
I've noticed is, you kind of always, for salespeople, they're hard to keep, right? And I don't know what good retention is, to be honest, but I can tell you that my retention is about 50%. So you hire one and you let go of one.
Yeah.
That's typically how that what I've seen in this business and my business, and kind of other similar businesses, right? So I've got two guys right now that are going to be in person, and I'm switching to an in-person model. But most of the deals that we've done in the last 12 months have been virtual, and I'm closing. When I close virtually from another country.
Hmm. That's wild, man. That's super cool. So how are you? That's one thing I struggle with personally. I've done well in previous businesses I've had where like the in-person sales team, I've done a good job of keeping them accountable and like trying to do all those things, but I've struggled leading the team virtually, keeping the team engaged and actually building a culture. What kind of things are you doing to have success with that?
Yeah, so I think this is building the culture, especially, is one of my biggest flaws, because I tend to be a little bit more militant, and I'm
Mm,
realizing that from getting some leadership coaching. So I've done some stuff naturally, but I don't stay consistent, which is a hole in my business right now. So I think a huge thing is our Google Chats
mhm,
channel, sort of like our Slack. My head of dispositions, my director, he's, every time we close a deal, like we sell a deal, he's posting. We the acquisitions team posts when they lock up a contract. Everybody, gets behind it, bunch of emojis, bunch of reactions on it, bunch of gifs, things like that. And then same thing when we sell a deal, same thing when we get a review. Everything's going in front of the team, right? To really, that does help build the culture.
mm,
um Now, another thing that I do that's small, but it's gone a long way, is every call that we do, we go over attitude of gratitude and numbers.
mm,
So, for example, on my sales calls in the morning, I want to hear one thing that they're grateful for, which helps rewire their brains at the beginning of the day, especially during a meeting. You know what I mean? If you're having a meeting at 8 or 9 in the morning, it's your first one. Some people, man, they're just they're kind of hard to get into that like a positive mindset.
Right.
So finding something that you're grateful for, even if it's small as having clean water,
Right.
right? We go over gratitude every time, in every call, and then we go over our numbers, right? So there's like the culture part, and there's the accountability part of what
Yep.
did you hit, what were your numbers yesterday, and that's something that, I think there's a big difference between keeping a team accountable and having a good culture.
Mhm.
And we've done a really good job of accountability, but I've never been, I tell people when I interview them, this is not the company that has pizza parties and air hockey tables in the office.
Mhm.
This is more of a culture where we're here to make money.
Right.
And, some people like that, but to an extent, even the people that say that they like that, they kind of want a little bit of, a fun environment where they can talk about what they're doing over the weekend and stuff like that. Otherwise, the work just becomes monotonous. So,
Mhm.
um, having those meetings, having those conversations, where people are, having their company coffee mugs and hats and stuff like that. Those little things make a difference.
Yeah, 100%. And then I'm guessing, yeah, you can probably have already answered it, but those sales meetings, the hour sales training you're doing every day, is that it's all in a group setting?
Oh yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. So group settings, we do an L10, where we do a kind of like a weekly hype.
Mhm.
Hey, these are the big wins. We just brought this person on the team. You guys are doing great. Love you guys. Go crush it. And I'll see you soon. Right. Like
Mhm.
kind of those. Everybody goes over their numbers for the last week. Everybody's got a different number. They should be short, like 15 minutes of just gratitude, numbers, wins. It's a hype meeting on
Mhm.
Mondays. Right. So
Nice.
we do that as well, which has been pretty helpful.
Awesome, man. No, I appreciate you sharing. Yeah, it's super helpful. So yeah, man, let's get into it, man. One of my favorite things to talk about is sales. So man, let's talk about sales. So what have you done any other trainings besides the Jeremy Minor one, or that was the first one you found? You said.
Yeah, no, I've done, I mean, little parts of everything, right? Like I've taken things from, John Martinez, Trang,
Mhm.
Jeremy. I mean, I don't, yeah, even though if you go look at my books back there, like I'm always reading on sales. Jeremy's the process that I stick to. I mean, it's my process is 95% NEPQ, right?
Mhm.
Now there's 5% things that I'll hear from other people and I'll kind of tweak it to
Mhm.
fit into my process. But the NEPQ process is really my sales process. I've tailored that. I've worked with the CEO. I think he's a chairman now. I don't think he's the CEO, but Matt Ryder, Jeremy Miner, and Marco Cortese, the big guys over there. We've sat down and we've built out a process. NEPQ works upon every industry. I think they're in like 156 different industries, and we've
Wow,
made it specific for real estate investors buying off market properties.
I love that, man. So what is NEPQ?
Yeah, neuro emotional persuasion questioning. And so what if I'm going to break down the process? I think that will be more helpful
Mhm.
and kind of talk about each step, right?
Mhm.
And why it's so important. So the first step is called the connection phase. And what we do in the connection phase is we need to just lower their resistance because these people fill out a form online. And as we all know, they've got this huge wall up.
Right.
And if we try to move through our sales process with that wall up, we go nowhere, right? What's your offer? Just tell me, just get to the offer. I don't have time for these questions because they have a lot of resistance, right? So the first thing we need to do is break that wall down. If we don't break that wall down, we're not moving forward, right? And so we use neutral language. We're using neutral language instead of hard language. So we're not saying you needed us to give you a cash offer or staying away from words like that. We try to replace them with words like, hey, it looked like you were possibly looking for some options to move on from your property on Main Street, right? Or you're possibly trying to find out what your property was worth in case you sell it down the line. So neutral that it's undeniable. So they don't get triggered with resistance.
Mhm.
The worst thing you can do is call them and, hey, it's Bob. You want a cash offer for your home? They're like, we're very neutral in our introduction,
Mhm.
right? Then the next phase we go into is our situation phase. And in our situation, we need to understand their situation fully. Otherwise, we make assumptions that may not be true. And that causes a lot of resistance,
Mhm.
right? Especially, have you ever heard a salesperson say, like, oh, it sounds like you're pretty distressed? and they're not, and they get really upset, right?
Yeah.
They get a lot of resistance. So we go through our situation phase, and we're not making any assumptions. We're asking very open-ended questions to figure out, the common things that we hear, right? So we have a process for homeowners, a process for investors, and a process for vacant properties. You either live in the property, someone else lives in the property, or no one lives in the property. I've never met somebody that doesn't fit those three, right? So
Mhm.
we have a process based on what we know about each one. Homeowners, they need to find somewhere else to go. Where are they going? Why are they going there? Why is that important to them? How is that different than where they're at now? Right? Investors, we're talking about the tenants. Where are they investing their money after? Vacant properties, how long has it been vacant? How much are they spending on that property? Because that's probably going to be a pain point for them as well. And then we go in once we really fully understand their situation. And I say fully understand it. We've got a good picture. We don't move on. And if there's something that's kind of confusing, we really want to get a good picture.
Mhm.
Now we can go into what we call problem awareness. And in that problem, a lot of people don't realize that they have a problem, right? We might see it. And
Mhm.
you've probably seen this when someone's in foreclosure and their auction date's in 10 days, and they're trying to get above market value for their property.
Right.
They're not even fully aware of their problem, of how severe it is,
Mhm.
right? So we go through those questions and we're never telling, right? We're not telling them, hey, that your property, you're going to lose it. I see people make that mistake all the time where they start telling people that are in foreclosure, for example, that they're going to lose their property and lose all the equity. Like someone's probably told them that before, and for some reason they're still not changing,
Right.
right? So we need to ask thought-provoking questions that create behavioral change.
Mhm.
And the way that we do that is by going through this phase. So now we've got our problem awareness phase where we go through, we ask them why is this important to take care of now? Right? We ask them, what's the rationale behind reaching out to us rather than, I don't know, go listing it on the market, praying
Mhm.
it sells with a realtor. We go through all of those things. Or if we don't find any motivation, we just tell them, hey, it sounds like things are going really fairly well for you here. I mean, what's the main reason that you're reaching out to us rather than just keeping the house with all the cash flow, right? We're going to get that problem. Now, from there, we have solution awareness, which we break into two parts, right? Number one is what have they tried to do? We're going to uncover every objection that they're probably going to give us later because we know we're going to get objections if we don't dive into it. And so what are the common objections we get, right? I can do this myself. I can work. I might list it with a realtor. It's not enough money. So we start getting ahead of those objections ahead of time. What have they
Mhm.
done so far? Why has that not worked? Why are they looking for this? And the second part, which is really important, and this is if you don't take away anything from this call and just take away this, it's called future pacing, right? Can you get them to imagine the second that their life and how their life is different when
Mhm.
that problem doesn't exist anymore? So when they're in that new house, sitting in their living room, having dinner with their family, and they're out of the house in the dangerous neighborhood, or when you know, this foreclosure's behind them. They're not stressing every day about scrambling to talk to investors and worrying about losing the equity in their home and having their credit destroyed. Can they picture that moment when that no longer happens?
Mhm.
Now, once we have those things, we're going to ask them what happens if we keep pushing it off. We're going to ask them a consequence question. What happens if you keep pushing this off? What happens if the problem gets worse? Right. And then from there, we qualify them. How important is it for you to change your situation? Right. How important is it for you to take care of this so you don't lose all the equity in your home? How important is it for you to get out of this dangerous neighborhood so you can finally make that change in the safe neighborhood? Right. We want to really qualify them, help them realize that it's important to them because if they don't realize it's important to them, they're not going to take action. Right.
Mhm.
And then once we do that, we can go into our presentation phase. So that's our we're basically we're going through our options and we're doing cash offers, we're doing MLS, right?
Mhm.
We do basically those two options. We're not flipping properties right now, so we do assignments and we do MLS, and we really lean into the fact that we're going to sell it to an investor as a positive instead of what a lot of people do is they kind of hide it and they say like we're the buyer.
Mhm.
We basically tell them like, hey, if we're buying your property, we want a good deal, but like we've got investors that will pay a little bit more money,
Mhm.
and so we're going to fight to get you the best offer, and this is the way that we're going to do that. So we flipped the script a little bit right there from what I normally see, and that's our sales process. That's the NEPQ process translated into real estate investing.
I love that, man. No, that's great. I think that's way more powerful than what a lot of the other stuff, or like 99% of the other stuff that's going around. So yeah, I mean, my style is pretty similar. So yeah, I think asking questions is the most important thing you can do. And like you mentioned before, a lot of people are afraid to ask those questions. Um, I don't know why, but especially one of the things I do is I start with easier questions and then kind of go like with I call softball to hardball, and we ask like the harder, more difficult questions. But those questions are like how you move it down, you actually find out what's going on, and you actually make it possible to make a deal happen.
Yeah, and I think yeah, I think the same way. Why do you not ask those questions? 'Cause I wonder the same thing. And I had a call the other day where this guy came in with just tons of resistance on one of my reps. And the second he tried to ask a question, he's like, "Don't ask me any questions, just give me the offer," right? So my team knows whenever they get someone like that to send it to me because I'm going to call them right after. I'm going to see if I can close them.
Mm.
And it's not like I'm at 100% with those people. So sometimes I do, sometimes they hang up on me as well.
Hmm.
And I went through my sales process, and the guy ended up hanging up like the second I asked a question too, right? And so I hit it from a different tonality, obviously changed some things because I'm not insane. I'm going to change the process. I'm going to change what I did a little bit from what he did,
Hmm.
right? My rep asked me, why did you go through the sales process again after he hung up on me in the first place? I was like, look, if I don't go through the sales process and I just give him what he wants, and he says, what's your offer? And I just give him the offer, I have just as likely of a chance of getting that deal under contract as if I don't talk to him at all and just email it to him.
Right.
So the worst case scenario is he hangs up on me and then I email him the offer after, and he's not going to sign it either way. But if
Hmm.
I can get through my sales process, I have an exponentially higher chance of being able to lock up that contract, right? And so why would I not try to go through my sales process? Why would I change it on somebody just because they want to act different, right?
Hmm.
That's how you create inconsistent results is you have a seller that, you think is different, so you don't go through your sales process anymore. And I asked Matt Ryder, was the CEO. I think he moved up from there now, but what was the biggest thing that changed for him? And he said, I think when I realized that the only thing that I can do is follow my sales process no matter what, that's when I started making good money.
Mm.
Because I used to try to change everything per person and switch everything. And he's a sniper too, so him and I kind of relate. It's just like a process when you're shooting, right? You're not going to take a shot and miss and then change everything. You're going to take another one. You're going to figure out what your constants are, get your best possible process, and then bring that every time.
100%. Yeah, yeah, I agree completely. Couldn't agree more. It's yeah, it drives me crazy when people don't have scripts or systems or anything. Yeah, it's literally my whole speech at the event. It's three biggest mistakes I see wholesalers making. And yeah, that was like the one that drives me the most crazy. So do it at the
Good.
same time, follow the fucking system. Follow the script. There's a
I
reason.
love it.
But yeah, I mean, that question is funny. You said the realtor one. It's one of my favorite ones. See, like, why not just list it with the real estate agent or realtor? Like they'll tell you, they'll literally give you everything you need there. Like, oh, we know we want to sell fast. We don't want to deal with that. We need money now. It won't work. Just a lot of work it needs. Like, okay. And when you get them to say it, I think one reason maybe people don't ask the questions or it hasn't clicked with them. Like when you get them to say that answer and you get them to say those things, it's so much more impactful than you telling them that because they're saying it out loud, they're verbalizing it, they're telling you that it's not you telling them something.
Yeah, and one of the things, it's funny, people think, well, what if I give them the idea to go list it? Like they haven't thought about doing
Right.
what 80% of people end up doing and listing it before. So yeah, if you're listening to this and that's what you're worried about, if they wanted to list it, they would list it,
Mm-hmm.
right? If they were looking for that, they wouldn't be reaching out to you, they'd be reaching out to real estate agents. They're looking for something different.
Exactly. Yeah. Just know there's a reason they're talking to you. So
Yeah.
that's huge, man. So yeah, man. What other so I'm sure you see a lot of stuff going around. What other sales things or tips do you have for people in wholesaling? What are some of the things that you see that you disagree with, or what are some easy takeaways that I guess someone listening could take away to start closing more deals?
Yeah, there's so many. But one of the biggest ones that I see is going into condition and price too
Mm.
early,
Yeah.
right? And so if it were that easy, you might as well just email the offer and not talk to them. right?
Right.
And so what a lot of people do is they go into the condition of the property right away, right? Which is getting the prospect, getting your seller into price-based thinking,
Mm,
right? What we want to get them into is result-based thinking, because every decision that we make is based on an emotion, not off of logic. And people are like, well, I make logical decisions. It's all about the money for me. Yeah, because that money gives you some sort of sense of security. And like the real reason you're making your decisions is based on a security because it makes you feel a specific way,
mm,
right? Numbers might give you that sense. So what we want to get people into is result-based thinking. And when you go into your introduction and then tell me about the house, tell me about the condition, tell me about your time frame, right? Which you hear all the time is like condition, time frame, things like that. And then you just give them the offer, right? First of all, once you try to ask them anything personal after that, like anything about their actual situation, after they've given you all the information about the house, they're in such a transactional mindset that they're kind of wondering why you're asking in the first place,
right.
right? I just gave you all the information. Why do you need to know that?
Hmm.
Right? So that's a huge mistake. And then second off, once they're thinking so transactionally, I mean, making that switch is just difficult, right? They're like they want to get to the offer at that point.
Hmm.
Where our approach is sounding way more conversational, where we don't even want to talk about the property. Ideally, for the first 45 minutes, we're not even talking to the property. The longer, the better. So what we've noticed is the longer that you can have a conversation with the seller about their situations, their problems, and their solution before you go into the condition, the more likely you are to get that contract.
Mm,
So that's the first thing, is going into condition way too quick. Second thing I really disagree with, and I hate to say this because a lot of the guys that I disagree with their sales processes, I like them as humans a lot. Like I
same here.
really
Yeah.
I love Steve Trang. I think he's the
Hmm.
man. RJ Bates. I think he's the man, right? I
Hmm.
love those guys. But I do not like well, how much you're looking to get for it in the first couple seconds? Because then
Yeah.
I personally,
I'm
I
with
don't
you.
like
I'm with
it.
you.
And I also don't like the hard commitment
Hmm.
of saying, hey, at the end of this call, I'm going to give you an offer and I want a hard yes or a hard no.
Yeah.
And I feel like what that does right off the bat when you ask for a hard yes and a hard no is you get them extremely combative
Yeah.
of, oh shit, I'm about to go into battle. Like I'm about to go to war. And
It's
so
off-putting. Just I feel like just even hearing it, like I feel off-put. Like if I just try to put myself in the customer's shoes, and like, if I
yeah,
was going through a sales process, someone said that, and he'd be like, the fuck?"
it kind of feels like somebody comes up to you and it says like, hey, like we're about to fight.
Yeah.
Right? We're about to go to battle here. Like
Mhm.
let's go, right? And so I really disagree with that. I think, as doing the opposite of that will help you have a more natural conversation. So what we do, instead of saying, hey, at the end of this call, I'm going to give you an offer and you just need to give me a hard yes or a hard no. And I can take a yes just as good as I can take a no, but don't give me a maybe, like kind of making people feel like they have to make a decision.
Yeah.
I mean, imagine if a car guy, you're at a car dealership and somebody tells you like, hey, I'm going to show you this car, but at the end of it, you need to tell me yes or no about the
Right.
price. Don't give me a maybe. Like,
Yeah.
well, I'm
Yeah.
already like, okay, well, we don't do this at all.
I feel like
Um,
it just feels like it makes you kind of sound entitled too. Like I don't know, the customer doesn't owe you anything. Like,
that is another point that I've never even thought about, but it makes a huge difference, right? And so what I like to do in the beginning, instead of going into that hard commitment, is I like to downplay the call and make
mm,
it sound even more basic than it is.
mhm,
Hey, this first call is really basic. It's really just more for us to find out a little bit more about the property, like the condition it's in and when you're possibly looking to move on from it, just to see if we can do any good for you. Because honestly, you might be better off just keeping it or listing it with a realtor.
mm.
That's my introduction. And what do they do when I say you might be better off keeping it or listing it with a realtor?
They're like,
They
no,
go,
you're
oh,
wrong. They want to correct you.
that, or they say, or they go, oh, this isn't a sales guy. He's not going to try to pressure me into working with him.
Mm,
He's saying that I might be better off doing something else. And
right.
I always like to start my calls with that, right? I like to say, hey, I don't have a ton of time. I've only got a couple of minutes, just this first call is just to see if we can help, because we might not be able to. And that
Mhm,
is the truth. We might
right.
not be able to. They might be better off with something else. The thing is, 30%, 40%, sometimes 50% of people are better off with our product, which is, if you're closing 30, 40, 50%, you're doing something really well,
Right.
right? And a lot of people lose those sales because they're using those other tactics. So those
Mhm.
are like probably the two biggest things. And I think the other thing of doing it sounds like and labeling someone incorrectly for them to correct you.
Mhm.
I feel like what that does is it gets them in defense mode, and it sounds like you're not listening,
Right.
right? So if you say, "Oh, well, it sounds like you're doing really well financially," and they might correct you, you're right, and give you the answer of, "No, I'm not doing well financially," but if you would have asked the question instead of making the assumption, right?
Mhm.
And you just ask it more open, they feel like you're listening instead of you're making assumptions and you don't really fully understand them.
Right.
Right. So I don't love the make the assumption to get the correction. And I
Mhm.
hear a lot of people training that, like
Yeah.
a lot, not just one. I think probably of the like 4 or 5 guys that I really look up to in the space, like 3 or 4 of them do that. It's
Mhm.
not a personal attack on them. It's just my sales process is different.
Yeah. I love that, man. That's great. And then, so I know you mentioned it's the first call. Do you do a two-step sales process, or how many calls do you guys do in your sales process?
Yeah. So so virtual, I always want to try to go one call close. Our
Mhm.
best deals, most of our 100K rips are from one call closes.
Mhm.
And I think the reason that that is because they just fill out a form. That's when they're the most motivated,
Right.
right? They've they've felt enough urgency to fill out a form online, right? For inbound leads. So I try to do a one call close there. Now, if it's in person, I want to do, two click, set the appointment in person, and then the rep goes out in person. And they shouldn't walk out of that house without a contract, right?
Mhm.
I think, your chances drop significantly of getting that contract every call, every step that goes by.
Mhm.
Contrary to what some people say, which is you need to have, 3 or 4. We have data that proves that that's just not the case. Most of our contracts that come in, lead comes in and we lock them up within 7 days, usually within the first two. And I've
Mhm.
looked at that data with my team.
That's great. No, it makes sense, especially on if you're doing PPC and inbound leads. More than likely, they'll probably reach out to more than one place, or if they're getting ready to, and if you give them time to, they're going to reach out to someone else, and it's make it that much harder. But
Definitely.
if it's cold, I usually do two. But yeah, if it's an inbound lead, yeah, I definitely always go for the one. But
Yeah.
I love that, man. No, that's great. Any other sales tips? Any other things you have for people if they're, where would do you, I know you have an amazing Facebook group where you share a lot of this stuff. How can people find that group? And yeah, I think it's a great resource for people that are
Yeah.
trying to get better.
Go to facebook.com/investor sales coach, or if you look up NEPQ real estate, you can join our free group. I actually go live in that group every Thursday. And I do just usually a 30-minute to 1 hour free sales training. Just talking about sometimes I go over calls, my own calls. I'll go over a call review that I did, different scripts that are working, different parts of the script that work. I kind of look at myself more as a scientist, so I'm always testing things and
Mhm.
sales. I love it. I mean, it's one of the most fun things in wholesaling is testing new things in the script. And sometimes it works really well and sometimes it doesn't. But when it works well, I always like to share it with other people so they can get a little bit of a shortcut. You can also find me on Instagram, Jon Lallande 22. And you can, yeah, see a little bit more of my content where I'm talking about my sales process because it is a little bit different. Those are probably the two easiest ways to find me.
I love that, man. No, that's great. Yeah, definitely go give them a follow. Check out the group. A lot of great content in there. Any other final thoughts or any other tips you have for people that want to get better at closing deals?
Make yourself uncomfortable. So the biggest thing that stops people from finding success and sales and really in this business is they're afraid to be uncomfortable. And at the beginning, you might get, my script, you might get Kai's script, and you go, well, I'm not going to ask those questions because it's going to be hard. And what if they say no? What if they get mad if I ask that question? Chances are they probably will the first time you ask it because you don't ask it the right way, or you ask it at the wrong time. You ask it out of context, right? That that will happen to you, and I
Mhm.
guarantee you, that's definitely happened to me. Kai, I'm sure it's happened to you before too,
Yeah.
right? And so understand that that is part of the process of getting better, right? It'd be unrealistic to try to become a professional UFC fighter and never get punched in the face.
Mm.
However, some reason we go into these sales calls and expect us never to get punched in the face. The reality is those UFC fighters that are professionals have been punched in the face more than anybody else, just like good salespeople.
Mm.
Those good salespeople are the ones that have been punched in the face the most. So if you're listening to this and you're struggling to close deals and you don't know why, but you're afraid to ask those uncomfortable questions, get punched in the face and you will get better, right? That's the number one thing. And even if you're in a tough spot in your business, just know that it's all about getting punched in the face a couple of times. You're going to get punched in the face and you got to keep going. And eventually, just like Kai said, it's always that gold that you're 3 feet away from, right? So if you stop digging, you'll never find the success. But if you keep going, eventually you'll make it. And that's in business and sales. So that would be my final takeaway if you guys are listening to this.
I love that, man. And then one more time, what is the best way for people to get in touch with you and the name of your group again?
Investor Sales Coach, so NEPQ Real Estate, so facebook.com/investor sales coach. It's the NEPQ Real Estate Group. And then Jon Lallande, Lallande 22 on Instagram. And my name does not have an H. So Facebook is the best place if you want to shoot me a message on Facebook. I'm pretty good at responding there. Not super good at responding on Instagram. So that's the best way to reach out to me.
Awesome, man. Well, John, thank you so much for coming on, man. I got a bunch of great takeaways. I know the audience did as well. We'll definitely have to have you come back again if you're up for it. Love to learn more about what you're doing with YouTube ads and some of the other cool stuff you guys are doing over there. But man, I really appreciate you taking the time to come on today.
I appreciate you having me, man. I have to come out to one of your events next time I'm stateside.
Yeah, man. Yeah, I'd love to have you come speak.
Awesome. Thanks, brother.